is the Kalamati Fruit Market. At 2.25 hectares, it is the biggest fruit and vegetable market in Kathmandu.
मेरो नाम सीता उप्रेती हो हाम्रो घर काभ्रे फलाटे परिवार संख्या 4 जना यही कालीमाटीमै हो यो कुनै धादिङबाट आउँछ कुनै पालुङबाट आउँछ कुनै बेलामा इन्डियाको पनि आउँछ हाम्रो किसानसँग हैन यही आउँछ राति आएर राख्दिन्छन् किसानले गाडीबाट अनि हामी बिहान आएर बेच्ने हो किसानसँग सोधे.
The market is for the produce from the Kathmandu Valley, where the farms in the valley attempt to meet the ever-increasing demand for fresh foods from the urban areas of the Kathmandu Valley. But in actual fact, only 10% of the food sold in the market comes from the valley. A further 64% comes from areas outside of the Kathmandu Valley, and 26% from neighbouring India.
काम करने यो केरा बेच्ने यो इन्डियाबाट आउँछ गाडीमा आउँछ हामीहरु गाडी छैन हामीहरु त यहाँ काम गर्ने मान्छे हो पठाउने मान्छेहरुको यो बेच्ने मान्छे मेरो अब यहाँ उत्पादन छैन त कहाँबाट आउँछ कम छ उत्पादन यहाँ कम छ.
What comes out very interesting in our study, which is again not rocket science, is that as the city expands, its population has grown and so has its food needs. So 50 years ago, 20 years ago, the local produce would meet large section of the food requirement of the cities. Now it is imported.
Trucks, pickups and vans transport the goods from distant locations using the tarred and often gravel roads that lead into the city. Once the food arrives, it must be sold as soon as possible, since there are minimal storage facilities. Kathmandu, whose metropolis alone has a population of close to 1 million inhabitants, has historically been a melting pot of Hindu and Buddhist culture. As its population has grown, its food system has become more complex and dependent to try and meet the high food demand. It is a food system which mirrors similar sprawling developing cities across the globe. In fact, human civilization is built upon it. It began with the dawn of urbanization some 5,000 years ago, when cities were established. There was a metropolis which attracted people from the outside, with dreams of wealth and easier lifestyles. To support the influx of people, pressure was put on the rural farms surrounding the cities to supply the food. Technologies transformed, roads and bridges were built. In recent decades, urban populations have soared, and the expanding cities have engulfed the surrounding agricultural lands. This convergence point of urban and rural are what the Nepali call the Desakota, the mixed lands, and many people living there take part in what is known as urban or peri-urban agriculture.
So what we see is as the urban area expands into rural areas, in that kind of a fuzzy space between urban and rural, where you still have a kind of very, very high urban footprint, but still rural characteristics. So essentially what we call a sort of a transitional space where lots of things are happening.
This farmer, a member of the Jayapu family, which has been farming in the Kathmandu Valley for hundreds of years, tells a story of the challenges of urban pressures land use.
परम्परा भाउ बाजार पालादेखि नै अब अलिअलि जाडीको पनि खेतले पुग्दैन अहिले जाडीमा पनि अलि उभेछ म पहिले 31 सालमा जाडी खाएर छोडेर अब घरैमा बसिरहेको छु छोराहरू कोही जाडीमा छ कोही फर्निचरको काम गर्छ कोही खेती काम गर्छ अनि बाहिर दुई भाइ छ दुई भाइ बाहिर दुई भाइमा अनि आदि आदि भयो ठुलो बाले 30 पाटी गयो हामीले 30 पाटी पर्यो सर अनि फेरि हामी 3 भाइ छौं 3 भाइमा 10 पाटी हुन गयो.
This peri-urban farmer, who cultivates a variety of crops and vegetables, faces the same challenge.
अब तपाईको चाहिँ अब पाखा बारीहरु छैन सबै बाँझै अब तपाईको चाहिँ यस्तो धान खाने खेतहरु सबै प्लटिङ मान्छेको बस्ती ठुलो अब यसै नै उसै नै खाने प्लटिङ छ नि तपाईको त्यहाँ प्लटिङ छ उ यो सबै प्लटिङ हो तपाईको यो सबै धान खाने प्लटिङै हो उ त्यहाँ सबै प्लटिङ छ हाम्रो त यो त आधी फाँड त प्लटिङले खाएको छ अब यसमा उत्पादन त एकदमै कम भयो नि त खाना त अलिकति घट्यो नै दुःख लाग्दो कुरा त छ नि अब आफ्नो धान खाने खेतहरू घट्दाखेरि
Photographs of these peri-urban areas clearly show how over the years agricultural lands necessary for food production are being taken up by urban encroachment. This is a trend not unique to Kathmandu, but occurs in most developing cities across the globe. Kampala, the capital city of Uganda, is another example of rapid urbanization. Following independence from colonial power, the decades that followed were marked by political unrest. But after the Idi Amin dictatorship and the ensuing guerrilla wars of the 1980s, the government began to stabilize and urban development increased. All around the city, houses, bridges and roads have taken over the cheap surrounding agricultural land. It is now a buzzing metropolis. But despite a transforming urban landscape, agriculture in and around the city is still very common, and the locals are finding new ways to overcome the challenges they face.
The history of urban and peri-urban agriculture in Uganda dates way back to the early 70s. During the Idi Amin regime, the economy was so much informalized. People had no jobs, and survival was difficult. So people thought of self-provisioning by growing their own food and rearing animals.
This man, Kaziro Stephen, has found a pocket of increasingly rare elephant grass in the city and is taking it to feed pigs and cattle. Livestock farming is a common income generator for many people living in Kampala. Goats and cattle are often found roaming the streets, much to the annoyance of many urban residents. Kaziro has finally arrived and is delivering the grass to a farmer who once was forced to turn to peri-urban agriculture for survival.
Aba Kampala district balonda omukyala ayagala ennyo okulunda nga President Museveni atuwadde ente era nze omu kubo yafuna ku nte za President ze yagaba mu Kampala district.
Deborah turned to agriculture when times were difficult and she could not feed herself or her family.
Abantu nze ku lwange nayagala nnyo okuguza abantu abanneetoolodde kubanga mu kiseera ekyo tewaali nte mu kitundu kino. Ne njagala okuguza bannange abanneetoolodde era kyabasanyusanga nnyo kubanga bafuna amata okuva eri nze. Era nakati bwe nkyaguza.
Farmers like Deborah are keeping livestock for income generation and farming crops for household consumption and self-sufficiency. Finding feed for the livestock in the city is always a problem. However, some farmers have found ways around this.
There's a group of youth who live in one of the suburbs of Kampala. This place where these youth are living used to be a dumping site for big hotels in Kampala. So this group of youth thought it wise that if they scavenged this garbage for leftover food and gave it to their pigs, they would earn a living on that.
Okay, these bags, this is garbage from hotels from Kampala. So we use this garbage for feeding our pigs because it is a little bit cheap compared to the feeds of the swines. So they are garbage collectors who bring for us these feeds. We pay them something small to bring us this garbage. So when they bring us this garbage, we sort out the bad things.
Naffe ke tufunamu ne tubuula n'abantu baffe nabo ne babeera buki bulungi. twasala amagezi emmere egulwa mu kyacu nga kyacu yali tetugisobola lwa bbeeyi naye bwe twafuna emmere eno eya woteeri ebeera nnungi ekuza embizi zigejja ogirunda mu budde emyezi 6 embizi eba nnene ng'ekuze.
Many farmers in and around Kampala are beginning to harness organic waste potential. This lady, for example, saw opportunity in gathering and selling leftover banana peels, a common feature in the city, as feeder for livestock.
So waste is playing a big role in making urban agriculture more feasible. Farmers who are lacking feed and all depending on elephant grass, now they can go to the market, buy all of those agricultural waste, the bio-waste I'm talking about, the organic waste, and feed the livestock.
Some farmers are also finding ways of keeping livestock in peri-urban areas, like this man, who has built a structure to keep his cows beneath his poultry and save space. Others, such as Jumba Frank, are experimenting with new technologies to increase production in small areas of land. He lives in a small 32 by 50 foot plot, but this has not deterred him and his mother from growing food.
My name is Jumba Frank Luyinda, and I live at Camp Green. It's our home, and it's a home initiative where we grow our own food and also try to sensitize other people to do the same. So basically you can come on right in and have a look. We have these, simple ways of innovating and trying to use the little space we have so that we can grow as much food as we need. So the reason why we have this is because there is a small space for us to use as a garden. So we erect these structures and try to grow as much vegetables around them. We poke holes in the sides, then we can even grow on top. So this technology is also borrowed from what we call the food tower. Food tower is a much larger structure and it looks more of a hill. And the reason why we call it a food tower is because it's big like a tower, and we grow food on it. Nothing else, not flowers or anything but food. We use things like old cat hairs. This one down here, this is an old cat hair, and we use it for keeping our seedlings like a nursery bed so that we can take them to the other gardens. And you can also use it as a garden anyway. We also use soda bottles as well, plastic, rather than burn them, rather than let them go and block the drainage systems. I usually call urban farming the modern subsistence farming. You grow for your consumption and sell off the surplus. Basically, we don't have things that are not edible. It's either edible or it has a health benefit. That's why we have these things here. Because usually, especially in urban areas, people spend more on food and medication. So once you have those covered, at least it's a good way to survive. You don't need to earn much, you don't need to make millions, you need to be happy and content and healthy.
I decided to make that small pond, to start with the small resources I have. Because the government doesn't assist us, so I decided to make it a family small pond. The crops I grow and the fish I get from there, sometimes I sell, sometimes I use it with my family. I'm very, very proud because my children and my wife, we don't go to market. Since '87, we don't go to market. We just depend on our resources. We are proud of that and we thank God for that.
By growing their own food and becoming more self-sufficient, these people are less vulnerable to disruptions in accessing food. However, urban and peri-urban agriculture is limited in its reach to large numbers of the urban poor who are food insecure, and its contribution to urban food systems is under constant threat. These food systems, already dependent on a good, predictable climate for agriculture, now depend on aeroplanes, cars, trucks, petrol availability, and a stable global economy. And dependency equals vulnerability.
If the transportation system is blocked, there is no food in the market. If the climate is dry, we'll have less production. If there is massive political disturbances, then again will suffer from food shortages. So multiple regions, and there are multiple linkages as well.
Suppose you have a massive cloudburst or natural disaster that wipes away part of your road or bridges, which happened in 1993 in Kathmandu. 6 bridges were washed away, roads were gone. So for a long time, the valley was sort of cut off, and the prices of commodities, food commodities, just soared up.
Indeed, a changing climate or the threat of a natural disaster is a huge vulnerability to food systems and the food security for millions of low-income earners.
Clearly, things have become more erratic. If you look at the climate, you have more intense storms now, more examples of forest fire, heat waves, cyclones and hurricanes. You had cloudbursts that's leading to, death. We had one in West Nepal and North India in June. Now, very hard to attribute these individual events to, global climate change, but what you can say is that the frequency of these extreme events are definitely increasing. So we need to be prepared in terms of how we deal with those increasing climate-related events.
In both Kampala and Kathmandu, changing weather patterns are a stark reality. And whilst should not be attributed to climate change without further research, it must be considered in the context of a very dependent food system which supports the livelihoods of millions of people.
So if you look this past 30 years or 40 years data, what we have found that there is significant, the evidence that there is climate change in Nepal. If you analyze our data, our meteorological data, there is evidence that temperature has been increased, and there is also some event that the weather pattern, particularly the rainfall pattern, has been changing.
What we are seeing is not what used to be. I would tell you that July would be a dry season, those years, but now it's no longer. The seasons that we used to grow crops have shifted, so you can no longer plan properly.
The weather patterns are continually changing and shifting. The drier periods are much longer now.
के हुन्छ पहिलो बेला अब सानो पानी आयो भने औसी नआउँथ्यो थुप्रो भोलि गाउँ गर्नु छ भने आज एउटा गेडे नआउनु भयो धान काट्नुको असिनाले खाइदिने अनि फेरि गर्मी बढी भएर आयो
डढेलो त यो चैत वैशाख ताका डढेलो भन्नुहुन्छ भने त अति नै हुन्छ डढेलो लाग्छ पहिलाको तुलनामा धेरै डढेलो.
Climate change, in some sense, is forcing us to begin to think about how we do things, why do we things, and how we do it, and to begin to think about perhaps there is a different way of doing things.
Interestingly, governments in both Kampala and Kathmandu are beginning to recognize that increasing climate risks and unplanned urban sprawl can significantly disrupt food production and distribution, and agricultural policy needs to be rethought in the context of these challenges. In Kampala, the KCCA government is slowly beginning to support urban and peri-urban farmers in policy making. This marks a big change in policy direction, which previously focused more on rural production.
Times have changed, and the realization is that there are a lot of opportunities that exist within the city. Maybe the focus was on rural at that time, but then there's a big urban migration, and it's causing pressure on the city itself. And systems of delivery have changed, that we can actually farm in small spaces with the new technologies available and produce a sizable amount of food within the city.
This is a huge improvement for the future of urban and peri-urban agriculture in Kampala. However, land zoning policies that protect agricultural land in the city, the cementing of bylaws into national law, and the proper support for urban farmers remain a major concern. Kathmandu faces the same challenge of working out how to optimally position agriculture within urban and peri-urban landscapes.
If we talk about the KTM Valley, we don't have any land use planning. In the past, the Kathmandu Valley is self-sufficient for the food grown in the Kathmandu Valley itself. But nowadays, because the population has been increased tremendously, and all the land, which is agricultural land, has been encroached by building infrastructure, settlements, houses, and so on. So we have very less, agricultural land remains in Kathmandu Valley. So I think we need to have some immediate land use planning policy. This planning has not been made so far, but we believe this is very much urgent need for the Kathmandu Valley itself.
The world we live in is changing rapidly. Further research on climate change and UPA is essential. Recently, a 9-city assessment was carried out, led by START and other partners, which included the cities of Kathmandu and Kampala. The assessment included analysing the extent of UPA in these cities, assessing its benefits and the nature of its role in the food system, as well as threats and challenges to its long-term sustainability. These reports are crucial for governments to formulate correct policies, and there is need for increased research in cities across the globe.
We need to bring in scientists, we need to bring in climate scientists, and we also need to bring in the perspective of the users, the farmers. What kind of challenges do they face? Is it the changing precipitation on heat that's more important for them, or it is unavailability of seeds in time, market for their products, other kind of input? So these are the kind of, emerging challenges that we as human civilization face. And Kathmandu is just a microcosm of that emerging complexity and change.
Urban and peri-urban agriculture is hardly the only food security concern, and it exists in varying degrees in different cities and regions. But understanding its potential role in an increasingly interdependent food system is key to planning for an uncertain future.